Hey friends, this is Marilyn from Tarot Clarity, and I'm still here to remind you that the Rosenwald Redux by Robbie Flowler is still on Kickstarter, and I don't think he's met his goal yet. The Kickstarter fund runs from, I think it was November 10th to December 13th, so we're in the last couple of weeks, the last 2 weeks. 2.5 weeks of the Kickstarter. So if you would like to get in on this, now is the time. It's a great opportunity. And it's a great deck. Now it's a full Minchiati +1 because he includes the Fool card, which the typical Minchiati did not, I don't think. And as you know, I'm not really sure what to do with the appearance of all of these astrological cards if they pop up in a spread, because sometimes like 5 astrological cards can pop up in a spread, and I'm like, what the heck am I supposed to do with these? Are they denoting different periods of time? Are they denoting attitudes or people? I don't know. So we'll just roll with it. And my philosophy is, if you do something enough, you figure out how to deal with it. So I have faith in myself that eventually, one of these days, it'll click. But mercifully, I'm putting it out to the universe. Don't give me too many astrological cards, if you can help it. So I thought we'd use this deck for my signature spread. And I also want to point out, I hopefully will have a few cup cards. And I had mentioned when I showcased this deck, and here just happens to be a cup card, where I had mentioned that it looked as though there was a separation between the joints of the cup. And I remembered Robbie saying that the blacks in his deck will be a lot blacker and darker. And so I put it in my own head, and I figured, well, maybe if the darks are darker, whatever faint line there might have been that joined the pieces together will have joined them together. But Robbie said, oh no, in the originals, they were disjointed. There was no connection between some of the pieces. Let's see if I can find another cup that looks just like, of course, now that's going to make a liar out of me. Well, here's another case in point. You see here, he said there were lots of, in the originals, they were disjointed, and he decided to leave it that way. He didn't like fill in the gap by drawing the line. So I just wanted to mention that to you. It's, in some ways, it's more of a facsimile than some of the other decks that we have that came down to us. So let me flip the camera, come up with a question. Oh, I just love shuffling this deck. And we'll get busy. I thought of an interesting point. For my Thanksgiving Day video, I did two. I did a reading in the afternoon, but in the morning I just had like a Thanksgiving Day reading, and I discussed memories that I had of growing up, where I grew up in the particular area where we were surrounded by the artifacts, and all around us, we couldn't escape the fact that our home was on the site of the Lenai Lenape previously, right? And it really brought back a lot of memories of being a kid, and in the magical location where I grew up. It was special. And then, of course, the next day was Thanksgiving, and you would think that would be the perfect opportunity to tell children about the story. We always regret that we didn't pick our grandparents' brains about things. I mean, I do. In my own parents, my mother didn't die all that long ago, and it wasn't until after she died where I thought, oh, shit, I should have asked her this or that, because we just, even if it's a gathering, sometimes family stories get told, but that's one of the reasons why I love my channel, because I share memories, that hopefully someday, and I created this channel for my descendants, so that maybe hopefully someday some of them will actually watch them and see some of the stories about our family, and this one crazy grandmother or great grandmother who read tarot cards and stuff like that. But we don't always, it's regrettable, because even at a family gathering, we may not sit down and tell stories. It's a shame. So I thought we would do readings. We do one reading today using this great deck to think of the things right now that we could prioritize in the time, give ourselves this period of time Maybe some astrological cards will fall and tell us when it would be a perfect time to do this. I don't know. To really sit down or write down something that you feel is really important for the next generation to know. Stories that you take for granted that, after you're gone, they'll never find out. Like my grandfather used to have this expression, God bless America, in a banana boat. Well, it was funny and we all used to laugh, but we never had any idea what that meant. And then he died and my father died and who knew? It was just an expression until I started doing like an ancestry family tree where I realized, holy macaroni or whatever. He came to the United States on a freaking banana boat from Cuba. I mean, that was really something that I would never have known that had I not had access or resources to do that. And had I not been inclined to look it up, I would never have known that expression actually meant something. Okay, so let's flip the camera and see what we come up with. And I want to do one shuffle like this because this deck just shuffles like a breeze. It's a real great shuffler. Okie dokie. Do a few overhands. Okay, 6 cups. Okay, so 6 is a perfect number. Come on, you all knew I was going to say that. And it's emotional. So we should get the stories out. We should get the stories out. And we should probably not waste too much time about it. Tell the stories about love. Tell the stories about, I don't know. Just tell the good stories. Tell the human stories. Okay, let's get some insight on what those might be. Another one. 7. Stories that you want to pass on to the next generation that are important. Another 6 of well-being. It could also be, advice on money or leaving generational wealth. People don't get rich because they're, because not always, there are some self-made people, but the really wealthy people are rich because they're born to something, right? That's what generational wealth is to leave something to the next generation. So you leave the health and wealth, you leave something for the next generation. What can you leave for the next generation? Or to express to your descendants, your kids, your grandchildren, how important it is. Live your life so that you can leave something to the next generation, even if it's wisdom, but especially if it comes in the form of a little bit of cash. Okay, so here we have another 6. Wow. So we have 3 6s. So it's all about love, all about it. All about love. Front and center of the core 9. Okay, now this is the fire. All right, this is the fire, the symbol for fire. So we can get a few ideas from that. Let's see what else comes up. Now, and fire is under the water, right? So boiling the water a little bit. Now, this isn't like we do have batons here. So now this is so far is a row of fire, as I see it. Fire and water. That's interesting. And air under earth. Ooh. So, life isn't easy, right? Life isn't easy. So we have 7 under a 6. The arrow points up. Okay, let's see what else we get. Very interesting. Life is not easy. That's for darn sure. Speaking of life isn't easy, we have sometimes life can be upsetting, right? Sometimes the emotions are strong and you can leave something for the next generation, wisdom or money or whatever. And sometimes, sometimes it's not there. Sometimes it's just really hard. But you get through it. So I guess so far, if I were to say, what are the stories to tell, it would be the stories of how you did get through something. And I just did a video on that, or a short, about that, either this morning or yesterday, something like that. It's interesting that's popping up like that. Just telling stories about how you get through something, or who you depended on and who you counted on, and how important it is to leave something for your descendants so that they don't just have to start from scratch. We have 4 and 3, so we have another 7. So we have an an abundance of 6s and 7s, and we do have a 5. But we mostly have 6s and 7s. 6, 7. Why was 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. Okay, I'm being silly. All right, let's go off and do the quints. For those of you who are not familiar, this is my signature spread. And I have quint cards, which is, I come up with, I'm not getting into it right now, but I do use a calculator. So for you who are not familiar with my signature spread, if you'd like to learn more about it, I have a video called Tutorial on my signature spread. And if you can't find it and you ask me, I'll put it, if you ask me in the comments section, I will put it in the descriptive area down below, but without your input, I won't. Hold on, I'll get the quints out. Okay, so as is often the case when we do my signature spread, sometimes one of the quint cards is a card that's already in place, so I have to take it from another deck, and I just happen to have several copies of the Rosenwald, and so I pulled the death card from one of Marco's Rosenwald. Now, with the Minchiati, you could subtract 42 cards. You could. What I did was I just added up the values of the regular standard tarot portion, and I disregarded whatever number the fire card would have been. And I've done it a number of different ways. Every time I do it differently because I'm trying to feel my way around using my signature spread with the Rosenwald Minchiati, or with any Minchiati. So I just thought I'd put it out there. And so we do have 2 death cards in play as a quint. We have the Sun card, and then we have, as the overall quint card, we have the Magician. Now I want to talk about the Magician as the overall quint card because I think it's kind of funny, because it kind of suggests, for me, that the Magician card suggests deception, sleight of hand, deceit, tricks, right? And sometimes, it's good to, sometimes you're deceived, sometimes you are. But sometimes we do the deception ourselves. And it might be fun, or a good learning experience for the kids, right? To learn in what ways they might need to be scrappy, or what lessons they can learn from you being scrappy. Now, if you cheated in your taxes and stuff like that, I wouldn't brag about it, But there might have been times in life where, by omission of the truth, you were a little on the deceptive side, or something that's harmless that won't be hurtful for them to, I certainly wouldn't say something that you did that was, that you're not proud of. But certainly maybe there are some times in life when you just have to be a little deceptive, right? And, sometimes you have to use a little sleight of hand. And sometimes those stories can be amusing. Now you'll notice that we have 2 death cards. So the death card figures prominently, and when something shows up more than once, you don't want to miss it. And in this case, they are both going in a different direction, though they're not facing one another. One is going out and one is coming in. And if you're asking why would that be, because there were 2 Rosenwald decks that exist, one in the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., and the other one, I believe, at a museum in Germany. And they were opposite. They were printed in the opposite direction. One was printed in the actual direction, and one was printed, I don't know which is which, was printed, transverse, So I'm not really sure which of these, and it's immaterial, but I'm just pointing out why. So maybe it's important to tell stories about your grandparents, right? Or your parents. Sometimes, the person's, I always felt this way, and I say it myself. A person's only alive as long as the last person remembers them, right? I mean, Marilyn Monroe, she's been dead 60 years. I bet you heard of her, right? Everybody's heard of her. So she's not dying anytime soon, because there's people who, I remember her being alive. I was little, but I do remember. And I've seen all her movies, as I've seen every one of her movies multiple times. So a movie star has, or anybody who's on film has the advantage of having like a catalog of their work so that people can reference it. That's another reason why I did this channel, so that my loved ones could see me. In a way, I'll always be here as long as YouTube doesn't go disappear. That would be a real shame. I'd be really sad about that. But you're only alive as long as somebody remembers you. So tell the stories about the grandparents. Tell the stories that have come down through the generations. Tell the stories of the people who have come before you. And not only tell them, stories about the people who've come before us, and also if there's anything that you want to mention that's maybe a comical or funny story about, something, some of the mischief you might have gotten into in life, but focus on the good, focus on the fun. Tell them things that will help their lives. Remember, this card falls in the row where I was talking about generational wealth, excuse me. So things that could benefit them, right? So tell them the things that can benefit them so they can thrive. See, Cuckoo even agrees. Now, life isn't always easy. Life isn't always easy. So we have some cards that might suggest, especially as they fall under, fire and water and then earth and air as they do here. And this is like this. Sometimes it's hard, right? Tell them about the scrapes you got into that you never thought you'd get out of. That could also be another reason why we want to, address the number 13 card. And, always that, you get through stuff, right? You just get through stuff. Explain how you got through something. Like I said, we have a lot of cards of sixes. We have a few cards of, how many sixes? We have 1, 2, 3, at least 3 sixes, right? And we have 3 sevens, 3 sixes and 3 sevens, and they add up to 13, right? It's just kind of interesting that the predominant numbers here, coincidentally, give us 13. So we have 6 and 7, that gives us 13. We have 5 and 1, and 7, that gives us 13. That's why we have 13 there. So I think it's really important, to talk about how you get through. I think what this is saying is, and if I'm interpreting it for myself, it's about telling the stories of the people who have come before me, telling the stories of how I got through something, telling the stories or giving advice that will lead them to prosper, right? Tell them where all the money in the banks are so that, when you pass on, the money isn't sitting in a bank for perpetuity because they couldn't figure out what bank it was in. I mean, that's a thing, After my mother's estate was settled, we found money. We found bonds that we never knew it existed. And it would have cost more money to reopen the account, to reopen her estate for the money that we found in the bonds. So it was just not worth it because it would have cost more than what the bonds were worth. But had I known where the bonds were hidden, we would have had that money and we could have broken it up between the 4 siblings. You know what I'm saying? It would have been a nice little chunk of change. So just tell people the practical things tell your family the practical things that maybe they need to know. Tell them the stories that are fun. Tell them the stories, the moral lessons that you went through in order to maybe save them some trouble. And let them know that life is trouble sometimes and life is hard. And the best way to get through it is to get through it. Just got to get through things. And you have to face your fears too. If we see this card as fear, and then of course they don't fall this way. But I am struck by the fact that we have them going in the opposite direction, right? And so in my mind, I'm putting them together this way. So you have to face your fears. Anyway, I hope you thought this was helpful and insightful. And this is what I'm getting out of it from myself. This is the take I'm taking from it, and making sure that I tell the stories and that I give advice for how to live, so that you not only prosper, but that maybe you have something for the next generation, and tell the fun stories and the good stories and tell the scrappy stories and, tell about the hardships, tell about the descendants, and tell them how to get that, sometimes the only thing you have to do is just get through stuff. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be brave, be kind. Show up, speak up, and vote.